Welcome to the SunDried Tomatoes Podcast. I am your host and creator, Anthony Yotso. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find the audio-only version of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. Please follow, download, and subscribe where applicable. For those listening to the audio version, I have a video version on the SunDried Tomatoes YouTube channel. Please go subscribe there as well and check out other shows that will feature sports, brewing, and music, including my show Random Reactions, which is also on IGTV, some other videos on the NFL draft and European football or soccer for those of you in America. And for my new show, Legends of the Diamond, where I talk about some of the greatest ball players of all time that weren't allowed to play in the MLB when the MLB began in the early 1900s. You can also follow me on Instagram at eclectic_Yotso. That's ECLECTIC_IOZZO. I will have updates, teasers, and short videos to go with my YouTube content. Plus, you might be able to get to know me a little better as well. Today, I am joined by a good friend of mine, Josh Smith. Josh is currently the editor for Ground Support Worldwide, a position he began in 2016 and works mostly in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. He oversees production with a print magazine that comes out about 10 times a year, creates daily newsletters, and provides updates with the latest news on aviationpros.com. Ground Support Worldwide has over 17,000 subscribers in 150 countries. The mission statement says that the goal of the company is to deliver leading ideas regarding management, product, and service information for all segments of the ground support community, including ground support professionals at commercial, passenger, and cargo airlines, military stations, ground handling firms, fixed-based operators, or FBOs, and airports. Josh is a University of Wisconsin Whitewater alumnus like myself. He was also a reporter-editor out of college. In 2008, like myself, he started covering government and sports for the Waterloo Marshall Courier, and later became an assistant sports editor for the Jefferson County Daily Union based in Fort Atkinson. We also started a short-lived blog called I Am Sporticus and did a short podcast stint before we were both able to get full-time jobs in our field, him at the Daily Union, and me as an assistant sports editor for the Unified Newspaper Group. I, of course, am currently a sports editor for APG News in the Twin Cities metro area in Minnesota. And Josh moved on from the newspaper industry, so to speak, for his current position. I will be talking with Josh today about his time covering sports at newspapers and his transition to his new job, as well as the challenge of working for newspapers in a sports field, when life goals come into play, like marriage, having kids, just dealing with that daily grind, because the schedule is tough, and we will get into that. Plus, with Josh being a big fan of baseball like myself, he, of course, a Chicago Cubs fan, and I am a Chicago White Sox fan. We are the rare rival fans that respect each other's opinion and each other's allegiance, which is kind of rare. I mean, let's be honest, some people get into fistfights over this. Josh, of course, is also a board member for the Fort Atkinson Generals, a home talent league baseball club in Wisconsin, and we could probably talk about baseball for hours if we actually had the time. So without further ado, I bring you the real J Smooth, Josh Smith. What's happening, my friend? How's life treating you these days?
It's treating me well, and after an intro like that, even better. It's makes me feel like I've gotten around to doing some things over the last several years. It's great. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. I want to get into what you're doing now a little later as we go through this. But before that, I do want to bring up our beginnings, as we kind of had a shared path, especially with, how we progressed in our careers. We didn't necessarily get that full-time sports editing job right away. We had other things to do. I actually had a part-time one at first. And I know you remember our blog and podcast that we tried to do, talking about some March Madness debacles and we did a podcast with the the Cardinal battle from Middleton and Sun Prairie. Wisconsin knows about that, and obviously you worked for the Waterloo Marshall Courier, and I was part-time at the Wisconsin State Journal and as well as the state of Wisconsin. So we weren't actually totally in sports. So the goal was to add our resume, be more involved in the sports writing media world, and I know we both feel that it helped us land our first time sports writing gigs. So, let's talk about that process. I'm not sure people understand how difficult it is to break into the reporter editor field. So, for you, when we started to do that, what was kind of going through your head as we were doing? Obviously we were having fun, but it was also to kind of build our career. So what were some of the things that, you were really hoping to accomplish like that? And how was that challenge of wanting to be the full-time guy and not there yet?
Yeah. Looking back at that time, I'm pretty proud of some of the work that we put together on that blog. And, if I'm being honest, is it the best work that either of us have put out to date? No, I would certainly hope not. I'd like to think we both have progressed as writers and editors, but just the work that went into kind of building our own schedule, mapping out the coverage that we were planning for a given season of sports, and even just the scope of topics we were covering. We were writing about high school sports in a pretty large area. We were, kind of blogging about, the latest happenings in college and professional sports. And even then, not really limiting ourselves to just strictly baseball or, just football. We wrote about anything that kind of caught our interest on a given day. So, in the grand scheme, we might have bit off a little bit more than we could chew in terms of like really sustaining, that pace of writing we were doing at the time, and just kind of those big picture goals that we were kind of hoping that blog might produce. But I do think it produced some other big picture goals, and just that we were able to kind of develop our own individual writing skills. I think kind of having that peer-to-peer relationship that you and I had, kind of being the same level professionally, but just having honest feedback with one another about the the articles and blogs we were writing, and just passing them back and forth. I think we both improved as writers at a pretty quick rate. And I'd like to believe that, the fact that we both landed, real sports writing jobs, not just our passion project sports writing jobs, I want to say within a few months of starting that project, maybe 4 or 5 months, no more than 6 really. So that's the part that I'm really proud of, is that we were able just to work together to help one another, improve our craft and land those types of sports jobs that we were looking to get into. And then even after getting our official sports jobs, so to speak, still being in coverage areas that overlap from time to time, and running into one another at sporting events where you were covering the opposing team that I was covering, so getting a chance to work together on that, on the blog was fantastic. And then being able to collaborate kind of out in the professional field right after that. Both of those memories are pretty special when I look back at kind of how my career got started.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting when you talk about, how we might have bit off more than we can chew, because it's a lot more work than people think. I mean, like doing this now, I'm trying to do this monthly podcast and a couple of shows and stuff on YouTube and things like that. It's difficult because you have to work around not just your regular job, as it's not like I'm, funded to do this at this point. Maybe in the future, which would be amazing, if I get monetized later, again, that's cool. But it's more of being able to do, like, I just wanted to do this to kind of get out some of the skills that I have and things like that. But it's difficult. I have all these grandiose ideas and I have to always curtail them. And I always have to be like, it's okay for me to push this back and push this back. You want to be pretty consistent, as, people might forget about you or not tune in. But, at that time, we're in our 20s, like pretty much just out of college, trying to do this stuff. with our other jobs, and we had to travel to like meet each other a lot. We had to meet halfway and things like that. I'd had to come down to, Waterloo for when you live there for a little bit. And I think that like when we finally got our full-time jobs, when we were in the field, we realized it's going to be almost impossible to do our regular jobs and do that as well. I think we tried to keep it going for a little bit. Like you said, like I feel like we, I know I wrote a couple more things and you wrote a couple more things. We did a couple interview things, and then we did some things that were in addition to our regular job, maybe with the opposing team, so it didn't conflict and things like that.
Right.
But we definitely did it for a little bit. We tried, and then we kind of both were like, yeah, I was thinking about this, and you were like, I was thinking about the same thing, and we were like on the same page. Like it accomplished what we needed to do.
I think a big thing of what it needed to do was help us just exercise that writing muscle. And maybe it was some hubris from being just a young hotshot out of school, but I feel like plenty of my professors emphasize that to be a better writer, you just got to write, every day, write and write and write. And, and I heard them, but kind of felt like I was doing okay, doing things my way. And then we got involved in this blog, and we really were writing every day, a couple times a day, just to try and keep populating the blog with, new articles on a regular basis. And I think that ultimately did produce stronger writing out of both of us. And you're right, it did what it needed to do, and it got us in the door. And then from there, we were exercising those writing muscles just on a daily basis when we were going into work and getting paid for it, which was a nice bonus.
Oh yeah. At the time, it's like living the dream. It's like we finally got that sports writing gig. We're covering sports and getting paid for it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And what you said, I mean, obviously that's something for anyone that actually still wants to get into sports writing. I know at this time I'd probably tell people to make sure that you have other skills besides just writing, because of the way the industry is moving. But it's the same thing, like trying different things like this. Even if it's just, I watch this game on TV and you're writing something for yourself, practice writing. Like, I think that that's definitely huge. And it's actually one thing I actually see from people that are like, I want to be an intern and write. And then, I'll edit their story and they'll be like, oh my God, you edited it like this much. And, I'm trying to be positive, but I'm also trying to be like, my managing editors are going to expect this kind of work. So I'm trying to help you by editing this. And, getting practice might help with some of those basics, things like that, for sure. And one thing I got to say is that, obviously, like you said, it's really fun that we were able to go to different towns, cover things. We'd overlap, we'd go cover a game, then grab a beer afterwards. A lot of times we go cover a game, go back, if I was in Fort Atkinson, we go back to your house. We'd both write our little updates online, go through anything like that. Then we'd like grab a beer somewhere and kind of hang out and talk about things. And that obviously was really fun. And I'm sure, like me, you met some of the other sports writers around, like guys like Dennis Semrau, like Rob Hernandez, when they were, in town, and they were always really nice. You can have conversations with them at games, they'd ask you questions about your players. You'd ask questions about the players they were covering. It was really fun. But at the same time, there was that grind, especially playoff time. And I'm sure that oh too well, like myself. There were times when, you got paid a little bit of overtime at the Daily Union, which was nice. I did not at UNG. It was essentially you cover your stuff and then maybe later you can, not work as much, and then it'll count as, that you worked, even though that's technically like illegal, I think. So it's like you put in like 60 hours some of those weeks, like especially like track season in the summer. I think that around Memorial Day, I would always call it Hell Week, because our deadline was Tuesday night. So we'd have conference track, we'd have conference tennis actually on Monday, then we'd have conference track on Tuesday. And then there'd be another conference track on like Wednesday, then golf Thursday and Friday. in the morning. So, that's a lot of time that you're out covering, taking pictures. And then the following week you had sections for track and regionals and all that. So it's definitely a grind. So I wanted to get into you, like when we were in our 20s and you're single and things like that, obviously it's a little easier. You could kind of work around it. Most of your friends don't go out until at night anyway, like to like later. So I never really saw it as it took away from like my free time. I just kind of worked around it. But as the years go, it definitely starts to eat into your time, especially when you have certain life goals. So how is that for you? Just kind of that grind. I don't think people understand how challenging it is to be a sports writer, especially for high schools when there's so many teams to cover.
Yeah. And there was a unique challenge I had when working at the Daily Union, which was publishing it was an afternoon paper. And so we would essentially work a split shift day every day of the week. It was a weekday paper published Monday through Friday in the afternoon. So our deadline to go to print was 10 a.m. when I started, and then that moved up to 9 a.m. shortly after. So essentially we would, come in the morning and put together the sports section and get it ready to publish. And those hours would be about 5:30 to about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. And then you'd kind of disappear and have your evening, so to speak, and your free time from about the lunch hour till, 4, 5 in the afternoon, depending on what season it is. Spring stuff is getting started a little earlier in the day. In the winter, you might have until 7 or 7:30 at night when basketball games are getting started. But then you essentially go back to work, cover your events, take your photos, write up any of your immediate game coverage for the website, get your gamer story for the next day ready, catch a few hours of sleep, get up in the morning, finish putting the paper together, and then, and just start the whole process over. So, in terms of, interacting with other people, if you're making the comparison to your normal 9-to-5 job, my 5 o'clock, clock out for the day was really just in the middle of everybody else's work day. So I agree with you. I didn't really feel like it was eating too much into my, personal life because, my personal life was just taking place in the middle of the day, and it was a good time to get kind of personal items done. But after, several years of that, and you're right, as life situations changes, all of a sudden you're like, oof, I feel like I'm running out of time here pretty quick. So couldn't agree more that your perspective on the hours required to do the job definitely change. But what I have found is that even moving on to other roles and other job responsibilities and other subjects to cover, it still takes that time commitment. But I guess kind of how that time is stacked can certainly be more advantageous than others.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously I've kind of had different relationships before the one I have now. I'm engaged to my fiance Alexandria, but obviously you met, your wife and now you have like a family together. So I'm guessing that went a long way into choosing to maybe find a more consistent hour of a job, something that is a little bit more tangible so that, okay, I'm going to have this time for my wife or my kid and things like that. So, how is that, as that's going on, is that even going through your head that you might need to rethink the kind of work that you're doing?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I'm not sure I have a whole lot to elaborate on. You hit it right on the head. It's just your life situation's changing. And it's as when I first met my wife, she was working a third shift job at the time, and I was working this wonky split shift job. So it was pretty much when we first started dating, like well, we'll see you on the weekend. We just kind of go live completely different lives. And, obviously that's not something that's going to last a long time, in a happy relationship. So we both ended up finding, jobs that kind of fit the lives we wanted to live a little bit better. And, we're both pretty happy with where we're at now.
Yeah, I'm guessing the transition to, I definitely want to get in now to kind of the transition, because you had to go, and I know this from just leaving Wisconsin to Minnesota. I didn't have a job here yet, so I didn't know what to do. Kind of, you leave this one job where you have like these certain hours and you have these certain things you have to do, and it, like you said, it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's kind of at random times, and during certain times of the year, you're almost always thinking about, okay, it's the playoffs, like which of my teams are going to be good, how about the opponents they might play. You're really thinking about the game almost more, the seasons and the teams almost more than just your normal work schedule. It kind of bleeds in to other times of just thinking. Yeah. But I was lucky enough to get a job here like right away to be a sports editor. But I was really thinking, like, do I want to do something that's different from this? Because I'm almost used to the hours at this point. Like, I'm almost like, I kind of get the way this works. And I'm like, it's hard for me to think about that transition of now, you're working closer to a 9-to-5, or, you have more consistent time where it's like easier to schedule everything, as opposed to the sports world where your schedule really depends on how far your teams go in the playoffs. So for you, like, how was that, thinking about that transition and changing just almost everything about how you were going about your day to day? Because that's what happens. Was that going into your thought process too, of like, can I do this? Can I switch out of this role and go to this role?
Yeah, I think I might have been a little naive on just like how easy it was going to be to kind of switch that work schedule, that workload, because it's real easy to look at those office hours that you're going to work, in a B2B setting. But with that, just like anything else, when if a breaking news story takes place within your industry, there might be you might have to drop what you're doing and make sure that you're providing that coverage to your readers, just like you would in a newspaper setting. And while there's a little bit more structured working hours, there comes with at least in my industry, with more significant travel, which obviously you're away from home for several days at a time. I think it's a benefit and a perk in a lot of ways, just to get to see some really interesting places all over the world. But, if we're talking about finding that work-life balance and making time for your family, sure, you're not gone from, away from the house, 5 nights every week covering sporting events, but you might be gone for 5 consecutive days because you're out covering a trade show or conference, in another part of the world. So there's still some, balance that you got to strike. But I think your initial question was, how do you make that transition? And I was excited to move away from just the sporadic nights, not knowing, until like a week beforehand what your schedule was going to look like. I think it's a lot easier to deal with some of that time away from home when it's coming, weeks, months, in some cases with trade shows, years ahead of time. Yeah. when that conference is going to take place. So I think at least the way my mind is wired, it's better for me personally, just because I like to look at the calendar and know exactly what's going to be expected of me at certain times of the calendar year, at certain times in the month as our production cycles come through, and just being able to plan around that better suits me, I think, professionally.
Yeah, and I think there's some people that I've known that have left journalism to go in completely different fields, and I'm guessing that that's an insane transition, because you're kind of leaving everything you've been doing, almost like starting over. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing that helped. That you're still essentially you're still in journalism, you're still in communications. It's almost the same thing. You're still writing stories, you're still putting stuff on the web, you're still talking to people. You're still putting information and news out there for people. So, I mean, I think now's a good time to kind of talk about that. How is your day-to-day job? Like, what are some of the things that you have to do, and what do you like most about it? You talked about going to trade shows. I was going to ask about that. That's got to be kind of cool to go to those and kind of see if you're dealing with different tools in the industry and things like that. You kind of get to see it and then talk to people and then report on it, but you're in the middle of it. That's got to be kind of an interesting thing to see, especially with some of the topics you have to deal with, aviation being one of them. It's pretty fascinating. I was kind of checking out some of the things on there, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of stuff to kind of go through. So, what's that like at your job?
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels between if we can call it the traditional journalism, your newspaper world, and the business to business media world, at least from an editorial standpoint. Your goal as an editor is still to serve your readers. And, that's what we set out to do. But in the B2B world, the publications are, 100% advertiser supported. You're not relying on, subscribers like a newspaper is to keep the business afloat. So you kind of toe that line a little bit closer in terms of that separation between editorial and sales, where there's a hard cutoff in the newspaper world. It's a little bit of a softer divide in the B2B world. So again, the goal is still to serve your readers and give your readers the information that they need to do their jobs better. But you might do that in ways that support sales efforts at the same time. That could be as simple as interviewing an advertiser, that works with our sales team and including their comments in an article that I'm writing. Or it could be a little bit of a broader scope of just building editorial content that's going to attract more readers and hence make advertising, a more appealing option, for our magazine's clients. So it's, it's still editorial work, but there's a little bit more of a team effort sometimes between the editorial team, the sales team, the marketing team and audience development team. It really is a group effort to make sure, everyone's pulling in the same direction and striving for the same types of goals. But beyond that, B2B magazines have very niche audiences, but that's not unlike working for, some of the smaller local papers that you and I have both worked for. You're still going out there and providing objective news coverage, but you're still cultivating it for a specific group of people and that are reading your publication. And whether that's, fans of the local football team, or parents of the kids who might be playing varsity sports, who your readers are, and you're going to, try and, tailor what you're writing to deliver the information they're looking for. So that's really a big part of the B2B world, is understanding who your audience is, who your advertisers are, and really, I guess, focusing on whether or not you're providing the content they're looking for, and evaluating that on an ongoing basis and adjusting where necessary to keep that audience engaged in what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you talk about being 100%, advertising backed. Obviously, you have your niche too, so you kind of have your audience is your audience. So I feel like there's a little bit more stability there. You don't have to really worry, like, is this thing going to fold? Because that industry is always going to be there. And if you're the person that they go to for that niche news, that's kind of, and I feel like that's kind of why small town papers have survived over daily newspapers too, because of that niche as well. But, it's one of the things I've actually discussed with myself. And, I feel that, a lot of newspapers or other print media, especially, in the traditional sense, not B2B, but they kind of, I feel they kind of forgot to make sure that they look for other ways to make revenue besides just advertising, because I don't think it's the same. Like, you can kind of I'm guessing in your field, because of the people that are reading it, you can guarantee a certain kind of advertiser to come in and say, of course I want to advertise my product because the people are reading about the products. It's not the same in a newspaper. It has to, it depends on what this business wants to do in the local town or something, or the city. They want to sell something. And as you can see with this pandemic, what happened is our revenues went down because we were advertiser based and they were struggling. They couldn't have people come to their place because we had protocols in place. And I think it hurt newspapers. It forced newspapers to maybe cut hours, or, possibly not. Like, our paper hasn't taken on freelancers, which is obviously a strain on us as editors, because, we're covering a bunch of teams. It's nice to have a freelancer go and take pictures for you because you can't be at every place on the same day. But it's kind of why I'm doing this. I kind of want to show that we can, as journalists, kind of go away from just doing this product and saying this is my revenue, when we can maybe make more media. If we had the resources, or papers or magazines or whatever, even broadcasts, like if they just do TV or radio, open it up, do it all. Have your print newspaper, and then have maybe have your reporters do podcasts. Like, have a studio in your newsroom instead of a random office that nobody really uses. Because in 4 offices I've been in for newspapers, they all had this random office that nothing was in. Could have been used to do things like that. And it kind of goes to, part of the reason why I would think too, to transition to another job for some people, is they're afraid of that stability. Is my paper going to fold? Is my paper going to be able to give me a raise to handle, if you deal with inflation and all that kind of stuff? You don't want to be making the same amount of money now as 10 years from now. Like, it's just not sustainable, especially if you want to have a family and buy a house and things like that. So I feel newspapers and things bringing in new revenues will help alleviate some of those problems, because instead of just depending on these advertisers, you're giving people another reason to subscribe to your content. Like, if maybe like a Netflix type thing where people pay $3 a month and you get your 3 favorite reporters are going to have a podcast about their specific topic, once a month, and maybe they'll have video content to go with it, as well as the articles that they put on in the newspaper or online. And I wanted to get kind of your thoughts on the newspaper industry, because it does make me feel upset, especially like the Chicago Tribune sale. I don't know if you heard about that, but it's upsetting when that a company buys something and their whole purpose is to kind of strip it and, make all profit, but not really bother with the workers that are putting in all the hard work, and not really caring about the reader, because the reader wants the reader wants the content. I think it's wrong for everyone to say nobody wants to pay for news, everybody wants to steal news. I think that if you have someone, and this definitely goes for me too, like, if you have someone, you're going to subscribe to them, you're going to watch them, and you will pay if you need to, whatever it is, to get that person's opinion or that person's news. As a sports guy, I'm sure you follow a guy in ESPN or something, like you'll follow a bunch of things, and maybe you'll buy a book from him. You'll kind of support that individual as well as the business he's at. So, I mean, just what are your thoughts about that? And did that kind of go into your thought of transitioning, like to be in a more stable environment, maybe knowing it's difficult to run a paper, it's difficult to keep it afloat with the model that's in place right now?
Yeah, I don't think that personally that wasn't part of my decision to kind of shift gears professionally, but I do agree with your point about having a variety of ways to deliver news to people. I really that's really going to be a part of the industry, whether we're talking newspapers, B2B magazines or any other media outlet. You have to be able to reach your readers, and in the case of podcasts or videos, your listeners, your viewers, your audience. You need a variety of ways to reach them, and we're seeing that evolution taking place, presently and for the last several years. So, podcasts obviously, have just really taken over, social, kind of the broader culture. Videos and blogs have been, a staple on the internet for a long time now. And it's just, if you're not going to get the people to sit down and open a broadsheet newspaper, but you do have people looking for information other places, they're going to find the information they're searching for, but are they going to find it from you? And that's really the important part of this journalism, evolution. And where I'm optimistic is that journalism has always attracted, the lifelong learners, the people who they're in journalism because they want to learn about what other people are doing and tell their stories, and and just kind of move from topic to topic. I think journalists have to be naturally curious, so I think that quality I think that type of person that kind of harnesses that lifelong learning quality is going to be more important than ever to the landscape of the industry as this just kind of continues to change, and we ultimately land where journalism's going to be for many years to come moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that point. I mean, like you said, that's actually some of the positives. I'm sure you remember some of the random features you might have got, at the Daily Union or even, the Waterloo Marshall. It's interesting to hear some of the stories, and obviously some high school kids are more adept to talking more, maybe opening up more than others. Some are kind of shy or just aren't used to the interview process. But sometimes you get an old timer, like somebody who played, he's like 75 and just wants to talk your ear off about the times he played baseball for the school and some of the things he did. That's like some of the best part, I think, of being in the industry, and you could get those stories other ways too. And I think I'm guessing for you that you transitioned to this other thing, but you remained as a board member for the Fort Atkinson Generals. So you're still around baseball. You're still around kind of that home talent league you used to cover. And I noticed that you contributed and helped out the Daily Union a couple times with Fort Atkinson stuff. So you kind of are still there. And, I love sports, and I know you love sports as well. So, when you think about being a part of Fort Atkinson and being a part of baseball still, and kind of now you're a part of the story. You get to talk to these guys and kind of you're seeing the moments if there's something, and maybe you talk to somebody who used to play for the team back in, however many years. That's got to be fun. And I'm guessing that has to be really nice to still be in that world, no matter what else you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think personally, a sense of community is always been appealing. That's probably a big part of why B2B media is interesting. You get into these niche markets and you really submerge yourself, in this professional community. And then in terms of just my love for sports, I got involved with the home talent team here in town just from providing coverage for the newspaper. Kind of saw how the team operated and ended up spending more time around the park throughout the summer, and just found myself looking for being interested in getting involved in what they're doing. And ultimately I left the newspaper world, but it was nice being able to keep my foot in the sports world, even if I wasn't writing about it on a regular basis, by just kind of trying to do some of the things behind the scenes to keep the team afloat and keeping the seasons running smoothly. So it's been an awesome experience, and we're really just another wonderful community to be a part of.
Yeah, and speaking of baseball, we've kind of hit on some hard hitting things, a little bit of hard hitting, not too hard hitting, but I definitely want to get maybe a little bit more fun talk. Talk about some baseball, because I can't. I love baseball. It's one of my favorite sports, and it's just sports in general. It's fun to talk about, but talking it, and I will get to the MLB soon, because I'm sure we have a lot to say there. But I do want to stick with kind of the towny ball at this point. So I cover the Home Talent League in Wisconsin, as well as that's where Fort Atkinson is, and obviously you're still involved right now. The amateur baseball I cover here is the Champlin Low Gators, Class B team that's play in Champlin Park, and or I guess the town is Champlin, the school is Champlin Park. A little confusing sometimes, but it's real. There's something about town baseball. Like, I feel like town baseball is getting into the way Europe clubs used to be. Soccer clubs that have been around for hundreds of years, and MLB teams have been around forever now. Like, some teams from like early 1900s or before the major leagues, they were clubs. And as in Home Talent, like, there's some teams that have been around since like the 20s. They have, and maybe were around before that, but were just called a different team or were part of a different league. So you can really trace some of the baseball in a town for hundreds of years, kind of like you can with soccer in Europe. And personally, when I see that, I see it as like the pure form of baseball. It's really fun. You're getting players that kind of have, some are coming out of high school, some have played college, some have made like the minor leagues, things like that. Some are just that, like, they went on and did something else after high school, but they love baseball so much they wanted to be involved, and they can pitch and hit, so they wanted to play for a hometown team. And I think that's amazing. Right now I'm kind of looking at late 1800s, early 1900s, as I'm doing profiles on some for a show that I'm doing, Legends of the Diamond, that when you're listening to this podcast right now, there's 2 episodes out right now, and 2 more will be coming out in the next couple weeks. But looking at guys like John Wesley Donaldson and Grant Home Run Johnson, like, they all have like amazing nicknames, and they're playing for these crazy town teams where every town had a team. They called them barnstorming teams, where they'd like play for this team and they travel around to different towns and play all these different club teams. Sometimes they do exhibition games with like actual major league teams, because those, I don't know if spring training was as much as a thing way back then. So like, there's stories of like Grant Home Run Johnson like hitting home runs off of like Detroit Tigers pitching and things like that. So, or like, there's a box score of these players playing the Cincinnati Reds, and it's like, Bertha, Minnesota. It's like, it's kind of crazy to think about that these small towns are doing things like that. Yeah. So I mean, when you look at kind of towny ball and being involved in it, I'm guessing you're kind of like me. It's almost fascinating, especially looking at the history. I almost wish that it was as big as it used to be, that there were more towns involved, and that, it was more lucrative and maybe more people were paying attention, because a lot of these small teams, they used to get like 10,000 people to go to their games. It's just a little town team. Like, the whole town would come up, and surrounding towns, especially depending on rivalries and things. So, I mean, just, talk about some just being around it, and some of your thoughts on that part of, amateur baseball.
Yeah. I really appreciate that pure form of baseball that you alluded to. And in addition to that, I think a lot of times these hometown baseball teams have a tendency to take on a personality that kind of reflects, the town they play for. Obviously, it can may be as simple as just the team is comprised of people who live in that town. So, yeah, of course they behave the same way the other people do in town. But, I think you've probably covered enough for these games like I have, that when you go different places, you expect a certain atmosphere. Some towns are maybe a little bit more competitive, and it feels a little more tense at their ballpark when you're there. Other places, maybe focus a little bit more on the side attractions and stuff, and it makes for, more like the modern day minor league baseball game experience, where there's just there's a lot of family fun going on and also a baseball game, and you kind of get a sense for that. And then, there's some of these home talent teams, and and maybe I would guess the same up by you in Minnesota, but there are some teams where it's just like a couple of cornfields, and in the middle of it, there's a baseball diamond, and then like a dozen people kind of gathered to watch. But those dozen people love that baseball team, and I don't think it takes away, from that team's personality. It might just be, a smaller community, or, less people involved in the team management itself. But either way you go, all these towns have different personalities. The teams reflect that. Heck, sometimes, like I said, even the diamonds out in the cornfield kind of reflect, the fields themselves kind of reflect the community they're a part of. And that's the part that I find, really wholesome and entertaining about that level of baseball.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's funny you talk about cornfields. I remember, Utica is essentially that. It's just like a kind of a random place. And that was in our coverage area for when I worked for the Stoughton Courier Hub. And it's just like, there's a cornfield and a ballpark. And depending on how good the team was, or how big the game was, there might be maybe more people there. But yeah, a lot of times there was just a couple of people, but they were loud. They were into the game. They were,
and they fielded some really good teams too. Like they were a tough out some years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like you said, that part is kind of fascinating to kind of see these little towns and just this baseball world that's there. This like kind of love for the game. Especially with the players, like the competitiveness of the players. We were talking before this podcast, and sometimes there's brawls at these games because the competitiveness gets a little insane. It's fun to see, and that's one of the things where I kind of wish more people maybe knew. Like, I feel like a lot of people don't even know that some of these teams exist. Like they kind of go about their day, and maybe they like baseball, maybe they're casual fans, but at some of these stadiums, like Fort Atkinson, you can go grab a beer and sit down and watch the game, and it's like 7:00 on like a Thursday night, like Thursday night league stuff. And that's really cool. Like, hey, I'm going to go take a walk to the game real quick, catch a couple innings, grab a beer. Like, I love that, like it's kind of, and you're going to see people that, like you said, the community. I just think that's so cool to kind of have, a part of these players. And I know it's kind of a mixture of ages a lot of times on these teams. Like I said, like kids just out of high school, maybe, that are trying to get some extra work in before playing in college or something like that. Or, sometimes there's like 40-year-olds on the team and they're still playing. And, some of those 40-year-olds are hitting the ball better than the 25-year-old. And the 25-year-old's thinking like, I need to get better.
The Generals just split a doubleheader with a team sporting a 55-year-old catcher. Wow. That guy, he can play. He's good. He's very good.
I have 55-year-old catcher. That's amazing. That actually goes back into doing research for the show I'm doing. A lot of those former players in the 1900s, like, obviously they didn't get to make the major leagues. They were playing 50 years old, like, and the stats that are in the paper that we know of, because not everything was taken in, he'll say he was batting like 450 in like a 30-game stretch, facing major league pitching in exhibition games,
right.
Like, it's just crazy stuff where you're just like, how is that even like physically possible? Like, I don't know many major leaguers that have made it past 45,
Yeah, but it really does, just highlight too how the professional level has evolved, over the years too. Obviously the professional level was always producing the best of the best available, but a lot of those guys weren't even dedicating, their full-time, focus to the game. A lot of them, would play during the season and go back to their day job, so to speak, as soon as the season let out, and so the fact that, guys can just focus year round on being a better pitcher, it definitely shoots that quality of play up big time. And not to take away from any of the examples you've shared, but it's I'm going to guess that like if Max Scherzer rolled into Fort Atkinson today,
he'd mow people down.
As good of some of the young players we have coming up here, I'm not sure too many are making good contact and putting balls into play.
And that's one thing too. Scouts used to go to those old school home talent games and townie ball games because you might see a player that maybe didn't get an opportunity to go somewhere, especially back then. Not everybody went to college, obviously, way back in the day. So the scouts would come, they get you, and sometimes they'd sign you. They'd be like, I like your delivery. I like your stuff. We can work with you. That's not there anymore. So I don't know how, if you're that good, you're probably not going to play for the home talent league at 30. You're going to try to make the minor leagues or something, but
right.
Or make something, different like that, or even, try to play for some of those other independent teams. I know the Mallards usually take college kids, but there are other leagues like that where, hey, try out for this league, and, or some players go to Japan to play in those professional, or Korea. So, I think that probably hurts, someone being able to light up 100-mile-per-hour fastball that dips and dives and moves all over the plate that they're not used to seeing. But yeah. It would be amazing if Max Scherzer showed up at Fort Atkinson.
I would attend that game. I'd root my heart out for the Generals, but probably just be in awe of Mad Max just spinning nasty sliders into the zone and making our guys struggle a little bit, to say the least.
Oh yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing with professional too, right? Like the movement on pitches. Like sometimes you don't get it on television, or even at the game. But if you've ever really looked at what's going on, as I'm sure you do and I do, because maybe we're looking at that kind of stuff as baseball fans. I wouldn't call us casual fans by any means. So when that slider dips down after they just got a 95-mile-per-hour on the corner, and then this next slider comes and it just dips down at the last second, it's still 87 miles an hour. There's only a 5-6 mile per hour difference half the time, but it's enough of a difference with that movement that this is a professional hitter, and you made him swing like he didn't know how to play baseball. I just think that's amazing. In a major league game, when you see that, this is one of my favorite things to see, is a pitcher making a great hitter look like a fool.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Obviously, there's been a lot of conversation lately about what's wrong with baseball because the pitchers are excelling, and there's probably plenty of debates to be made about tinkering with how, with the makeup of the ball. And I don't want to get us down that rabbit hole, right off the bat here. But I bring it up to just say that I don't mind the dominant pitching. It's been entertaining for me, of course, a monster home run is always going to be a little hair raising and exciting, but that's not to say that just because they're low scoring games that they're not competitive games. And as long as they're competitive games, to me, they're compelling games. So I'm with you. Some of the things pitchers are doing, with these, off the chart spin rates and, just making the ball, dive, and not just getting big breaks, but being able to control when the ball breaks. It really is, impressive stuff. And, until batters want to stop swinging for the fences and, just being content with a strikeout or a home run every time up, pitchers are gonna continue to dominate. And honestly, I get excited when we're going 2 days between no hitters. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I do think that there's been an insane amount of no hitters lately, but sometimes that stuff like that happens in baseball too. It's such a crazy game. That's what's great about it. You never know what's going to happen. Some random pitcher comes out of nowhere, throws a no hitter or a perfect game, and you're like, to be honest, most of the time the best pitchers don't actually throw the no hitters or perfect games too. It's usually some random guy maybe he's decent. Maybe he's got a 6 ERA, and for some reason he just came into this game and had some crazy stuff. It's
the Wade Miley one was the crazy one for me, and I think Wade Miley's a fine pitcher, but I don't know if he had thrown a complete game in 5 years. So when you find out he spun a no-hitter, it was like, really? I'm good for him. I'm not taking anything away from him, but that's one where you're just like, that guy usually gives you 4, 5, 6 solid innings, on a good day, and then you turn it over to the pen. That's the kind of guy he is, and he's getting in on the no-hitter game. Things are definitely skewing the pitcher's way at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So keeping with the MLB now, obviously you're a Cubs fan, so I want to get into this because I'm sure you would love to talk about it. You had some great times, I'm guessing, when they won the World Series a couple years ago, just like I did when the Sox won, 2005. But, you waited so long, just like I waited long when the White Sox finally won. But obviously the Cubs have been through a lot of misery. The Sox are a team that the misery was just them never even being competitive most of the time. To this day, if they make the playoffs this year, it's the first time that they've made the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. That's how insane it is to be a White Sox fan. Like, they never have back-to-back good years. But, the Cubs have been close, just missed out on stuff. Obviously I'm sure you don't want to go down those rabbit holes as some of those other series where, things happened and then things went askew, but you finally got that World Series. How awesome was that for you? How exciting was that for you to just be a part of?
I've enjoyed it more recently. In the moment, Anthony, it's, I'm not looking for pity or anything, but I didn't find the World Series really enjoyable. There was just so much nerves and just begging that things would go right. Yeah. And then, they fell behind in the series 3-1, which allowed you to relax a little bit because you're like, well, this isn't going well, but maybe if they're competitive, the remainder, maybe it won't feel quite so sour. And they get to a game 7, and if you recall, there is a rain delay, right at the end of the game, and it's just so nerve wracking that it really wasn't a pleasant experience. And then when they won, I didn't jump around or scream or anything. I just kind of sat down and took a breath, and just was far more relief for me personally than joy. Yeah. And then during the World Series parade, there's a little bit more celebrating then, and family members have gotten me, the commemorative World Series DVD, and you can kind of go back and watch it after the fact and kind of appreciate it, enjoy some of the high moments, and kind of roll your eyes and shudder at some of the low moments. And really, it's maybe I'm just over dramatic, but it's taken a couple of seasons to get removed from the situation to enjoy it more. And I don't know if that's the same experience you had watching your team win, but I can appreciate how hard it is to win the World Series. The playoffs have expanded as of late, but traditionally it's just so hard to even get into the postseason. And then you got to be playing their best baseball at that time. A lot of things got to fall into place to even win one. So I'd kind of resign myself to that mentality that it's not a big deal if your team isn't winning, World Series every 5 years or whatever the case might be. Yeah. You'd like to go, shorter spans than, entire centuries between championships. But, when they finally did win one, like I said, it really just was more relief than ecstatic joy. But what was it like for when the White Sox won? Did you have a similar experience?
So one of the things that, I look at is it was interesting because I was at Whitewater, obviously. And so not being in Chicago where, my family would have been in it watching all the games, like especially my brother. And, you know, when they won, everybody ran to the parking lot from the neighborhood since it's right there, and they were like dancing and celebrating. So I wasn't a part of that. So, and they did sweep Houston, but there were a lot of tense moments in that series still. Like I always look at it as like, that was like the hardest sweep I've ever seen. Like, you know, they could have very easily not won that series. And when they first won, it was kind of the same as what you're saying. Like, it was like relief because you know the stories, you know that obviously they hadn't won in your lifetime at this point, and there aren't anybody that you know that's alive that was around when they won last time. You know? So it's like you never really knew about them winning. And because they didn't win a World Series, like obviously the Sox have been to a couple postseasons and things like that, but it's almost like this, as a fan, this weight on your shoulder of like, you know, they're doing good, but I just expect them to mess this up, even when they're like in it. You know, you just expect them to blow it somehow. Like, they're going to blow this. And I'm sure Boston Red Sox fans were thinking the same thing, you know, before they won finally. That, you know, also, I think it was the year before the Sox won, actually. And it was just kind of it was like a surreal moment that they won. And it's kind of the same where I didn't really take it in until like maybe the parade, when I got to watch that on TV and kind of celebrate it that way. And then when I went back home and I saw everybody had like, you know, like my dad had saved all the Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Tribune front pages of like every win in the playoffs. And he was like, and he gave them to me. And I was like able to look at those, you know, like I was able to take it in more then. And actually it allows me to enjoy now more. Like, obviously the Sox were rebuilding forever, and you know, they finally are hitting a stride here where they're going to be competitive, hopefully for a couple of years. You know, it'd be nice to see them win a World Series, but for me, it'd be nicer just to see them in the postseason, you know, just to see them in competitive games in September. And I'm guessing that that's kind of how you've been with the Cubs too. Like, they won the World Series, that's off your shoulder. Now you could just enjoy these games, enjoy that they're competitive. You know, I was going to say, like, moving on to this season, you know, not everyone was on the Cubs, like, doing anything this year. When I look at a team like the Cubs, I'm like, they still have players that have experience from the last couple of years of winning. And they still, when you win and then you have a couple of years of winning, there's a culture and kind of a confidence around you. I thought their offense is still one of the scary offenses. Like, the Cubs are never out of it. And I'm sure you know this. Like, I feel like the 8th inning, 9th inning, they know how to take walks. They know how to get on base, like, still to this day. Like, and they've gone on a streak here. Obviously, they did well against San Diego, you know, the last couple days. But, you know, for me, I thought their bullpen was going to be a little, just looking at their bullpen, I'm like, I'm not so sure their bullpen could hold up a whole year. So I'm like, they'll probably make a wild card 85, 90 wins, but they've been doing pretty good recently. And there's some guys that are doing better than you think. So when you look at the Cubs this year, do you see them as once again being in that? Do you see them maybe winning the division? Because I don't see anyone else running away with it right now.
No, the NL Central had a really bizarre offseason where everyone just seemed to be doing the bare minimum to remain competitive in a pretty mediocre collection of teams. The Cardinals probably are the exception. You know, obviously, just when you bring in Nolan Arenado, like, you're making a pretty clear statement that you'd like to be good. But it seemed like most of the conversation around the Cubs was, well, who out of that core of position players are still going to be with the team at the end of the season? You know, and between Rizzo and Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Javier Baez, and Wilson Contreras, like, you know, can you realistically expect 2 of those 4 to be here at the end of the year? And if so, like, which 2? That seemed to be the whole conversation leading up to this season. And now that, the majority of the team is playing well. Those four, included. The bullpen, as you mentioned, looked like it was going to be a weak spot, but they have found some really good late inning pitchers to kind of handle the 7th and 8th innings. And then Craig Kimbrell, looks like his old self again. There was a lot of dicey moments with him when he first came into the Cubs organization, and he's kind of back into his shutdown closer role. So if the bullpen's going to be shored up and the position players are going to play to their potential, it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of force the front office's hand to kind of keep that group intact to make, the contracts are running up, so it may still end up just being one last run, to the playoffs. But it sure would be fun as a fan, to see this core break up that way versus just getting to July and punting on the season and sending, two, really mainstay players off somewhere else to get some more prospects, like they did with Yu Darvish before the season even started. A trade like that's deflating for the fan base, and you don't like to see it. So, given the way everything was building up to the year, to see the Cubs winning some games here and sitting in first place, even by a narrow margin, that's it adds some promise to the summer. There's nothing worse than knowing your favorite baseball team is out of contention at the end of May. Like that's a bummer. Yeah. The rest of your summer is going to be lousy. Yeah. So I'm happy to be in the alternative situation here. And for you, the White Sox, I follow the Cubs, but I find the White Sox to be the far more compelling roster in Chicago right now. I got to imagine you feel the same way. The only thing that's not exciting is the cranky manager sitting at the end of the bench trying to ruin everybody's good time.
Yeah, and that's hilarious because, as you say that, like, I thought it was a mistake that they hired La Russa.
Everyone did.
Like, I don't even understand how it gels with them. There was other guys that I thought would be interesting because of they knew, advanced baseball metrics, and they actually know the rules of the modern game, and they probably would back up their player if somebody throws at them. But, for me, I feel like La Russa has already lost several games because of certain, either bad decisions or just simply that he didn't know the rules that are in this season. Like, you would think that somebody would be telling you what the rules are. I just don't understand how you can say, I didn't know that we had our closer didn't have to run at second base and possibly get injured because now he's base running in extra innings. Like, strange choices that he's made.
Is his coaching staff, kind of old school people like him? Has he rounded out, to your point, it seems like a bench coach or, one of the, first or third base coaches might, get in his ear and say, hey, by the way, this is how the new rule works. I don't know enough about the depth of the coaching staff. Is he just surrounded himself with, cronies essentially, or does he have a diverse makeup on the coaching staff?
No, there is a pretty diverse makeup. The hitting coach is kind of he's pretty raw. Like, he'll be in interviews and be telling a story about something he was telling Andrew Vaughn, and he literally is in an interview with the media, and he'll just start throwing F-bombs. Like, I told Vaughn that F the homers, just get that average up, just get that F and average up. I like that kind of rawness of him. And then their pitching coach is the guy that coached all those great players out of that high school team. Giolito and
okay,
and the his name's escaping me, but the Cardinals pitcher. He's kind of worked with guy. He worked with Giolito a couple years ago before he was our hitting coach, and that's when Giolito went from looking like a bust to the sort of the ace that he is now. So there are players there, but I feel like maybe they didn't understand their roles or like how far they can take those roles. Like La Russa seems like someone who likes to be in charge just based on his thoughts on that whole situation with your mean Mercedes with the swinging at a 3-0 pitch. And I do want to get into that with you, and we could just get into that now, and then I'll transition to other things. But, in that situation, like, I understand the unwritten rules of the game, and you don't want to be a jerk and just do certain things and, stealing bases when you're up 15-0, things like that. But they put a positional player to pitch. And to me, once that happens, whatever, it's just people playing baseball now. He swung at a 3-0 pitch, but he had kind of a rivalry with that pitcher. They kind of had a friendly thing going on. So, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with him in that situation, swinging at a 3-0, 45 mile per hour, like Ephus pitch that like curved right down into the home plate. And he hit it like over 400 feet, which more people should be talking about that, by the way. Like, you know how hard it is to hit a 45 mile per hour pitch over 400 feet? Like, that's insane. But, I understand, like, maybe he missed a sign. You tell him in the clubhouse. Why are you telling the media? And then when other players backed him up and said, I don't see anything. I kind of want him to be himself. Like, La Russa's comment was, I have an office and they don't. Like, I don't know why you would, do that to your players, why you'd throw them out like that. And then to not back them up when someone threw at you in public.
Right.
To say, I don't find anything wrong with that. That, to me, that shows weakness. And it can't feel good in the clubhouse. And I have to say that after he said that, the Sox went from scoring 16 runs against Minnesota to going through a stretch when they scored like 4 runs in 5 games. It makes you think, like, was their mental approach different? Like, did he mess with them? It's definitely nerve-wracking in that sense. I do like that the Sox are competitive though now, even with injuries. I feel like they've been in every single game except maybe 2. So even the games they lost, they had a shot. And I'm guessing with the Cubs is the same thing, especially in their sort of their prime, so to speak, when you knew that they were going to be definitely making the playoffs a couple of years ago. They were always in a game. It's like down 2 runs in the 9th, doesn't matter. They're still in this game. They gave up a couple runs early, doesn't matter. They're still in this game. They were always in games, and that's what the Sox, I feel like, they're always in games. They can score in different ways, and their pitching staff is very good. Their bullpen has been shaky at times, but when you look at it, it still seems solid overall, especially the top guys. So it makes you excited that if they make the postseason, you can't not say that they're, they're definitely World Series contenders. But like you said, how hard it is to win, being a contender and actually winning, 2 completely separate things. So, right now I'm just kind of enjoying it. Like, they won the World Series in 2005. So to me, I'm like, this isn't like breaking a 100-year drought. It's just, they're finally competitive. I want to enjoy it this time. I don't want to be like, are they finally going to win it? And be so nerve-wracked about everything. It is nerve-wracking when you're following your team and it's a close game, but it's a fun nerve-wrack, it's like, I love that competitiveness of it. Like, I want to, watch a game and be like, on the edge of my seat, like waiting to see what happens. That's exciting for me. And to enjoy that in the moment is a different thing than being so nervous that they're going to blow it again, that you actually don't comprehend what just happened,
Yeah. And I think the roster that the White Sox, it lends itself to that excitement, up and down, the order 1 through 9, like, there are exciting young players, and they're playing without some really key guys who are hurt, like Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez. You plug those guys into this lineup, and it's already very exciting. You put some young talent like that on top of this, I think it's going to be a really fun summer down on the South Side.
Yeah, and I have to say that when looking at other MLB teams right now, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but it's something that it kind of irks me, and we could start this off actually, because I'm talking about how many bad teams there are. there are a lot of bad teams, and I feel like there's more bad teams than I remember being in any year. But from that rundown that just happened with Javi Baez, like that ridiculous, like whatever is going on in the Pittsburgh Pirates head, like that first baseman, like you're just like, all you got to do is step on the back and you're chasing them back to home plate. Now, I'm not saying that, technically you probably don't want to run back to home plate and mess with your other runner, but it worked. The run scored. It was an exciting play. I'm sure you were like, what just happened? Because it's just so insane. But when I see bad plays like that, and then, you look at their record and then you realize that Arizona's really bad, Colorado's really bad, Baltimore's really bad. The NL East is super inconsistent. And it's like, is anyone going to move it around? I mean, the NL Central, like you said, the Cardinals and the Cubs are doing good now, but the Brewers have been inconsistent. The other teams in the division, like the Reds, are kind of, as a baseball fan, the Reds are disappointing because I know that they lost Bauer, but I didn't think that they would play as bad as they've been playing. And then in the American League, it's the same thing. The Twins are doing terrible as well. Teams in the West aren't looking like amazing teams. Like even the Yankees struggled at times this year, but you think of them as a good team, but I feel like everything is down in the league for some reason, and it could have to do with the pandemic and things being different, and they had a short season last year. But a lot of these teams, like the Pirates, they've had many years of being bad, and it's because they don't develop, they don't pay for players, they don't make smart trades or smart, like dumping players and then still rebuilding 10 years later doesn't make sense to me. Like I don't understand it, and I don't know, like maybe you're upset like me, but I feel like teams should at least be more competitive. Like, I just don't understand why there's a possibility of like 5 teams losing 100 games this year. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. You're right. It could be a bit of a hangover from the pandemic season. Obviously, we didn't really get a real clear measurement of the league last year, with the exception of the Dodgers. I think from the get-go they were head and shoulders above the rest of the field, and it made sense that they won the World Series. But coming back this year, just keeping with examples in Chicago, the Cubs players have talked a lot about how the atmosphere's changed since the fans have been returning to the ballpark. So if other teams start getting that boost from just having a different atmosphere around the stadiums, I'd be interested to see if some of those, some of those weaker records start to improve. That's not to say that, like the Pirates are just going to be world beaters, a month from now, but some of those teams that are the inconsistent ones you mentioned across several divisions, it'd be interesting to see if things stabilize a little bit more as the game we've come to know it as kind of gets back to normal.
Yeah, and I do want to call out too that obviously the minor leagues were affected even more with the pandemic. I think they've only recently restarted seasons, and a lot of those players hadn't played a year and a half unless they were at that alternate site where they got to play scrimmages against each other in case they needed to be called up. But that's a long time especially for a young player to go without playing. So that's got to slow down probably some teams' rebuilds. I saw an article about, how dare the Tigers still be rebuilding after having all these draft picks. And it's like, well, it's probably really hard for the rookies during the pandemic to get up to speed, right. So I kind of understand that part of it. But at the same time, I'm like, at some point, some of these owners have to rethink the way they run their teams. I don't know if a team can go from 100 losses, like, the Cubs obviously did to win the World Series. Houston did, although they apparently cheated. And then, the Sox hopefully are going from 100 losses to now being competitive. It's possible to rebuild your team if you know what you're doing. And I feel like a lot of these teams just they're like, fans will still come to the games. It's cool. And that part of it, I wish wasn't there. It's kind of an American sports thing too. You see that in other sports as well. And some sports people tank so that they could get higher draft picks like basketball and football. But, sometimes I kind of feel like it'd be fun to have if there was more baseball clubs, like home talent league teams, not to say that they would do this, but, minor league teams, things like that. If there was like a relegation system, like in European soccer, where like, oh, sorry, Pittsburgh Pirates, you're demoted. Your AAA team did good. They're promoted, to your spot now. and then now that they're in the majors, so people are going to want to sign with that team. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, I know that's impossible. It's never going to happen because of their money, but sometimes I think that would be cool. But I mean, a lot of people will talk about why there's more teams that don't do well every year, and that maybe there's too many teams now. We've had so many expansion teams, and the leagues are huge, and there's just so many teams that it's almost impossible to make sure that all of them are good because of that. Because, the best teams, players are going to want to play for those teams, or, some teams make more money, so they could pay, $300 million for a Manny Machado or something like that. But, or somebody could pick up Bryce Harper like Philadelphia. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that where we're at's good? Do you think, maybe more playoff teams would help some of these lesser teams, like maybe be more competitive in the season because they have a shot at postseason revenues and things like that?
It may. I guess I can't argue with the logic that if more teams could get in, more teams would be incentivized to buy at the trade deadline versus just kind of packing it in for the year. But that said, fundamentally, like, opposed to further playoff expansion. I really like the exclusivity of it, but that's from a fan's point of view. If I was writing checks, for player salaries every year, I might not feel the same way. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. I think it's that lack of competitiveness more times than not comes back to the bean counters, and the ownership groups who are going to ultimately, pay these salaries. And, I think the player pool argument, has been made. I think that's kind of a crutch to just say, to kind of distract from what the real reasons are, to say, well, maybe we'd be better if there weren't so many teams better than us. That doesn't seem fair. I think the teams that want to be competitive are. I do think that sometimes the way the major leagues are structured, kind of bottoming out and starting over from scratch, can sometimes be a necessity. And the teams that don't embrace that sometimes just languish kind of in mediocrity. They have a couple of good players, but they don't have enough around them. So they kind of, they can't quite get over that hump. The Angels kind of seem to be in that purgatory, and they've got the best player in the world in Mike Trout, and Shohei Ohtani's finally doing the things they thought he was going to be able to do. Yeah. And they're just like, they're sub 500 in like third or fourth place right now. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And with all that, I don't have a solution for the Angels. I don't think they should bottom out now because they got Mike Trout. But it's tricky. But the fact of the matter is, there isn't a salary cap. If you're willing to pay for players and you're willing to take the hit with the luxury tax, any owner of a baseball team has the resources to put together a competitive team. I just don't know how you incentivize that, to get all 30 teams trying to win at the same time. So it's a pretty long-winded non-answer, but I guess what it boils down to is that if an owner or an ownership group wants to win, they absolutely can make immediate moves to make that happen. There's no guarantee that they're going to win just because they spend money, but they can try if they want to. Crying poverty because they didn't get to sell tickets last year, I don't buy that too much. These are all billionaires running these teams, or at the very least, very, very multi-millionaires. Like weathering a bad year is miserable, but not making as much money as you thought you were going to isn't quite the same as losing money. And knowing that fans are coming back, like there is revenue that you can count on if you wanted to build a competitive baseball team. And for that matter, the Padres went out and did it. They made splashy moves all off season, and now they are smack dab in the middle of a division race with the Dodgers. They'll probably both make the playoffs and both be legitimate contenders to win the NL pennant. So I think that the Padres are the perfect example that if you really want to, just go do it. And the owners could if they want. But they're all trying to do it as financially unrisky as they can.
The Padres. The Padres started with the one bad White Sox move during this whole rebuild, the James Shields for Tatis Jr. That looks so horrible right now. Just imagine if he was on the White Sox. They would definitely be like the best team, probably. I mean, the lineup's already good. He probably would have got injured too somehow, trying to steal a home run in spring training. But me and my brother joke sometimes that the trainers on the White Sox aren't that good because they're always it's like May and there's already guys with hurt hamstrings. And it's like, I know it's the pandemic, but shouldn't these guys have the best training? Like stretch a little bit.
Good point.
What's funny is you kind of talked about, we're talking about adding more playoff teams. That has to go with some fans are upset that the purity of baseball's messed with. And we got some new rules that are holdovers from the pandemic right now. Some specific ones. You got the 7-inning doubleheaders and then the runner on second to start extra innings. Personally, I hate the runner on second in extra innings. I think it's the dumbest thing that baseball's ever done, and I kind of hope that they get rid of it. It takes away everything. It's almost like it just doesn't make sense. And I know, like, okay, you should score that run. And I'm not just mad that the White Sox have gone through games this year where they didn't score that run and somehow lost the game, even though they could have won. It just takes away from baseball. Like, you have to be able to hit. And if the game goes 15 innings, oh, well, like, you should have tried to score. You should have bunted a guy over. Like, you should be able to get on base once in 5 innings. Like, so I don't personally like that at all. The 7-inning doubleheaders, I guess I don't mind as much as some people because injuries happen and sometimes things could get nuts and you have 6 doubleheaders in 10 days. No one wants to see a team have to throw out their entire bullpen and now their bullpen's injured because they had to pitch too many innings. So I don't necessarily mind the 7-inning doubleheaders, but I also understand that 9 innings is a game that everybody knows. And, at the same time, those extra 2 innings, anything can happen. So, but, the players do know that it's 7 innings, so they can try to do certain things as if it's once you get to the 5th, they can just consider it the 7th and maybe change their strategy. But I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on some of those types of rules?
Yeah, I'm with you. I can live with a 7-inning doubleheader. And, and you make a good point as far as the approach. The game can be managed, appropriately because what the starting line, what the finish line is going into that doubleheader. So that's fine. I agree with you on the runner on second in extra innings. I don't understand logically how it speeds up the game because you're right. Theoretically, you put a runner on second with nobody out. Statistically, you should be able to move that runner to third and get them home, whatever it is, 2/3 of the time. But then you go into the bottom of the inning and the home team has the same odds of moving them over. So you're just adding a run for each team that doesn't break a tie, and This came up. The Cubs and Cardinals had the Sunday night game a couple weeks ago. It went into extra innings. I believe it was scoreless after 9, and they put a runner on second. Javi Baez hit a home run, and the Cubs scored 2 runs, obviously, and then the Cardinals came up and they got their runner from second base in on like a double, and the game ended 2-1. But if we didn't put a runner on second base, the Cubs would have won 1-0 because there was a home run in the top half of the inning and a double and the base runner got stranded in the bottom of the inning. So why is a 2-1 game in 10 innings better than the 1-0 final? You know what I mean? If you're giving both teams an equal opportunity, then you're not. I don't really understand how that speeds up the game, which is what my understanding is the whole purpose behind it is to just, it's somehow going to stop us from getting more 16 or 17 inning games. But if everybody's performing equally, it doesn't break that tie.
Yeah, and that's a good point because that is true. It's like statistically going to be a tie again. You're going to go to the next inning and there's going to be a runner on second again. If anything, it might make the game go longer because it'll just keep going.
Yeah, so eventually one team's going to score one more run than the other team. I don't care, if that tie gets broken. I don't know. I'm exhausted by it already. Truthfully, it just doesn't make sense to me. And it just feels silly to hit 2-run homers on the first pitch of an inning. It feels unnatural.
Yeah, absolutely. So, before we finish up here, I do want to get into your predictions because I'm sure you might have some. So, who are your top candidates in baseball right now to be in the postseason, as not just to make the postseason, but to then be World Series contenders. And who do you think, if you're going to name, it's hard to just say, this team's going to win. I don't even know how people predict that kind of stuff because, there's just so many things that can variables. But, who do you, maybe 3-4 teams that you think have a really good shot of making the World Series and possibly winning?
Yeah. Well, starting in the American, I like the White Sox. I'm kind of caught up in the moment here. They're an exciting team. They seem like a lot of fun. Obviously, they're gonna have to deal with whoever comes out of the East. Maybe a couple of teams if the Red Sox and Yankees kind of continue looking strong. I find the Blue Jays to be entertaining as well, just with their crew of young guys, and all of them are young guys from dudes I enjoyed watching their dads play. So the Blue Jays are a lot of fun, but I'm not sure I'd put them in that same group. To me, it's kind of Chicago, Boston, New York is I think teams to kind of keep an eye on. Just haven't seen much AL West baseball to make any real educated pick out of there. But then on the NL side, the Central's pretty wide open, as far as those top 3 teams are concerned. If the Cubs, Cardinals, or Brewers, get on a particular hot streak, or if any of those teams can just avoid a really, really poor stretch of baseball, any one of those could get in. And like we said before, it's hard to win the World Series, but if you're in the playoffs, you got a chance to do it. So that's kind of an appealing notion as a Cubs fan. But that said, in the other divisions, the Padres, I kind of have the same feeling I do with the White Sox watching the Padres play. The Dodgers are still loaded, so that's going to be a fun race to watch. And it looks like the Mets, are putting together a decent year over in the East. But as a fan, I'd love to see the Cubs just put together one last run like we talked about before. And if they don't, again, as a fan, I think I'd really like to see a White Sox-Padres matchup in the World Series. I don't know if it'd be great for national ratings, but as far as just young guys playing fun baseball. That would be a great 7-game series to wrap up the season.
Yeah, that definitely. I mean, I would definitely enjoy that kind of opportunity. When I look at it, I have to say that the East looks like a deadly race because you also have the Rays doing pretty good recently. It's interesting to see how that's going to shake up, but it's hard for me not when you look at the talent that the Yankees have, and then you look at like what the Red Sox have been able to do. That it's hard to not see them maybe pulling away later, but the Rays surprised me a lot. After what they lost after their run last year, you wouldn't think that they'd be right back there again, and somehow they are. So, I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from them, but I would agree with you that I would think that the Yankees or Red Sox coming out of that division will be tough. Obviously, I have to go with my White Sox. Though they do have problems with Cleveland. The thing is that Cleveland has problems with everyone else. So it's hard for me to think that in the end, with it being 162 games, that the Sox won't pull away later, especially if later, I mean, it's going to be like getting trades when you think about Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez coming back. It's going to be like you traded for some studs,
But you didn't give anything up.
Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty cool. So it's hard for me to think that the Sox don't make the White Sox don't make the playoffs. And if they make the playoffs with their rotation, it's hard for me to think that anybody wants to play them, especially in a short series, that first round series. So, I would look at White Sox, Yankees, probably as my top two coming out of the American League. With the Red Sox and maybe the Rays as dark horses, or if the Blue Jays get hot, like I feel like whoever comes out of the East is probably going to be a dark horse to make it. The West has been kind of weird. I've only paid attention to it a little, but Oakland's been streaky. Obviously the Angels have been streaky. Houston's been streaky too. They started hotter than I thought they would, but it's hard for me to think that they could sustain anything for the full season without Verlander. But, I don't really see anyone there that like would scare me in the postseason at this point. And obviously people can make trades later, but yeah, I mean, I would say probably Sox, Yankees, or anyone else that comes out of the East are the best bets in the American League. And then in the National League, the West division there, just because San Francisco's been doing good too. But when you look at San Diego and the Dodgers, it's hard not to see them as being not only in the postseason, but doing well in the postseason. And, if they end up playing each other in the NLCS, that would be amazing. That would be a really fun series. Yeah. How seeds and all that shake out. If the Cardinals make it, or the Cubs make it, or the Brewers make it, out of those teams, I would say the Cardinals and the Cubs probably have the better chance to maybe make a postseason run, only because the Brewers, it's hard for me to think that their offense would be consistent enough in like a series. They have shown some good pitching, and they do have hitters, but there's just something like, I feel like the Cubs still have that kind of mojo in certain situations. And if they are in a playoff series, especially if they're home for some games and they have the fans, and just the way that they play and the way their offense can score. And then, if their pitching is doing decent, they're going to have a shot to win. Like I can't say, I know that's to the chagrin of some of my family members who are White Sox fans on the South side, but I just don't see, like, if the Cubs make it, I wouldn't be surprised if they made a run, and then, in the East, no one scares me out of the East at this point. At this point, it's, who wants to win it more over there, and are they trying to not win the division? So I don't see anyone out of the NL East doing anything. I would say probably Dodgers, Padres are my top two, and then maybe anybody who comes out of the Central in the NL has a dark horse type shot. The Dodgers are the defending champs, so I would say that they're probably the top contender to make the World Series out of the NL, and I'll stick I'll be a homer and say the White Sox, in the AL, and I think that would be an amazing series, White Sox Dodgers. I think it would be great, so I think we're in for a fun season regardless. I think it's going to be great. And it's going to be I'm going to be getting to some friends are coming up from Chicago, and we're going to Target Field to watch a Twins White Sox game in August. And we just got tickets right behind home plate,
Nice.
First section, like right there, like we're like 15th row, but it's still, to me, I'm like, that's going to be awesome seats, it's going to be fun to be at a game. Like I've talked about it with other people. Like, I've covered games, but to go to a professional game and to kind of like that, to me, that's going to be like, wow, this pandemic is finally coming to an end. Like, and it's going to be a blast just to be in that atmosphere, because they lifted by that game. I believe they can have a sellout crowd at Target Field. So at least, unless something happens in between then and now, but it's going to be fun. I can't wait, can't wait to go to some games and watch some good baseball,
Absolutely. There's nothing better in the summertime. Just getting out to the ballpark and enjoying a game at any level, the home talent, like we talked about, the local stuff, Major League Baseball, minor league stuff, summer at a ballpark. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate, being able to talk to you and discuss different things, besides just baseball, but just like, the newspaper industry and sports journalism, and just being in journalism or anything communications like that it's really cool to kind of get that kind of like-minded stuff. And I would think that the audience would be interested in just hearing what we have to say, because, people might be interested in like this stuff that their local media has to go through, and maybe interested in just, the journey that we had to do. That is, I know you're going to get mad at me because I accidentally like misspelled your kid's name that was spelled wrong in the roster. But at the same time, maybe understand that it's hard work to get here. And you don't just get here. You don't just do this job or any kind of communications job without having to work hard, work your ass off, so to speak, and continue to do so. You can't just get the job and then be like, oh, I made it, I'm cool. Like, you got to keep getting better, right? Like, it's been fun just being able to talk with you about that stuff. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's been too long since we've caught up. So, if it takes a podcast recording to get us face to face, just chit chatting a little bit, and I'm all for it. And it's been a great conversation, and been real good reconnecting a little bit and reminiscing about some of the glory days, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we should definitely do this again too, even if it's not for a podcast,
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. So just want to say thanks to everyone who's been listening and supporting the SunDried Tomatoes podcast and YouTube channel. Thanks to everyone who has subscribed and downloaded the podcast, and to those who have subscribed to the YouTube channel itself. This wouldn't be possible with all of your support, and I really do appreciate it. And thanks again to my friend Josh for joining me. I will talk to you all later.